My wedding was supposed to happen exactly 48 hours ago. Instead, I am sitting alone in a motel room 3 states away, staring at a block list on my phone and trying to understand how my entire 6-year relationship was destroyed by an internet forum. My name is Mark. I am 28 years old, and until 3 days ago, I was engaged to Sarah. Sarah and I met in college. She was brilliant, a bit quirky, and deeply invested in online culture. I always knew she spent a lot of time on Reddit. She would frequently read me threads from Archie Amitha asshole or Archie relationship advice while we were making dinner. I always thought it was just harmless entertainment, a way for her to unwind after a stressful day at her corporate job. I never realized she was using those forums as a literal blueprint for our lives. The trouble started about 6 months ago when we began planning our wedding. My family is comfortably middle class, but Sarah's family is incredibly wealthy. Her father owns a successful commercial real estate firm, and Sarah stands to inherit a very large sum of money in the future. Because of this, her father insisted that we sign a prenuptial agreement. I had absolutely no issue with this. I love Sarah for who she is, not her family's bank account. I signed the paperwork immediately, without arguing over a single clause. I thought that would be the end of any financial tension. But 3 weeks before the wedding, Sarah approached me with a completely different contract. She called it a lifestyle and fidelity addendum. I sat at our kitchen table and read through it. Some of the clauses were standard, but as I scrolled down, the terms became completely unhinged. There was a clause stating that if I ever gained more than 20 pounds after marriage without a documented medical reason, she would have total control over our joint bank accounts. There was another clause stating that if I ever wanted to change careers or go back to school, I had to provide her with a written business proposal 6 months in advance, and she held absolute veto power. The final straw was a clause that stated, if we ever divorced, even if there was no infidelity, I would waive all rights to any assets we acquired together during the marriage, including our future home. I looked up at her, completely stunned. I asked her where this was coming from. Sarah looked at me with total confidence and said, I posted our situation on a relationship forum, and thousands of people told me that you, signing the regular prenup too quickly, was a red flag. They said you were playing the long game to take half my wealth later. They told me I needed a strict lifestyle clause to protect myself from being financially abused. I tried to reason with her. I told her that our relationship of 6 years shouldn't be dictated by anonymous strangers on the internet who don't know us. I explained that the terms were completely unfair and treated me like an employee rather than a life partner. After hours of intense arguing, she finally backed down, apologized, and tore up the addendum. She admitted she got swept up in the online drama. We hugged, made up, and I genuinely believed the crisis was over. I was completely wrong. It wasn't a crisis. It was just phase 1 of her test. Cut to last Thursday, the night of our rehearsal dinner. The dinner was held at an upscale restaurant downtown, paid for entirely by my parents. All of our closest friends, my extended family, and her family were there. The atmosphere was incredible, the food was perfect, and everyone was laughing and celebrating. About halfway through the evening, Sarah's maid of honor, Chloe, stood up to give a toast. Chloe has always been a bit intense, but she is Sarah's best friend, so I expected a sweet, emotional speech. Instead, Chloe tapped her glass, cleared her throat, and looked directly at me with a smirk. We all know Mark is a lucky guy, Chloe started, her voice echoing through the microphone. He's marrying into a beautiful, successful family, but we wanted to make sure he's really ready for the commitment. So, Sarah and I decided to run a little experiment last month. Mark, do you remember that gorgeous bartender at your bachelor party who kept flirting with you and handed you her phone number? The entire room went completely silent. My parents froze. My hands started to sweat. I remembered the night vividly. At my bachelor party, a woman working the bar had been incredibly forward with me and slipped a piece of paper with her number into my pocket. Chloe smirked wider. We hired that woman. She's an actress. We wanted to see if Mark would actually call her, or if he would hide the number from Sarah. And guess what? He kept the number in his wallet for 3 whole days before throwing it out. He never told Sarah about it. A real honest man would have handed that number straight to his fiancé the second he got home. The room erupted into murmurs. I looked over at Sarah, expecting her to look mortified by what Chloe was saying. Instead, Sarah was sitting there, nodding her head, looking at me with cold, judgmental eyes. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I looked at Sarah and asked, "Are you serious right now? You hired a woman to trap me, and you're broadcasting this to my family?" Sarah stood up too, her voice completely calm, almost robotic. "It wasn't a trap, Mark. It was a boundaries test. I posted about it on Reddit under a burner account. The community agreed that if you didn't immediately confess to getting a number, you were actively keeping your options open. They told me to watch your reaction tonight. The fact that you're getting angry right now instead of apologizing proves you have guilty regular tendencies. At that exact moment, something inside me snapped. I looked around the room at my parents, who looked humiliated, and at her family, who were looking at me like I was a criminal. I realized that I wasn't marrying the girl I fell in love with in college. I was marrying a projection of an internet comment section. She didn't trust me, she didn't respect me, and she was willing to publicly humiliate me based on the advice of thousands of lonely, cynical strangers online. I took a deep breath, looked Sarah dead in the eyes, and said, "You want to know what the internet thinks? Go ask them what you should do now, that the wedding is canceled." I walked out of the restaurant. Chloe started yelling at me, calling me a coward, but I didn't stop. I walked straight to my car, drove to our apartment, packed up my clothes, my passport, and my dog, and left. Within an hour, my phone began blowing up. I received dozens of text messages from Sarah's family, calling me dramatic, immature, and demanding that I come back to fix this because they had spent over $80,000 on the wedding venue. Sarah sent me a long paragraph saying that I was overreacting to a simple relationship check, and that if I didn't show up at the altar on Saturday, she would ensure everyone knew I abandoned her. But the most disturbing part came the next morning. My younger sister sent me a link. Sarah had actually gone back to Reddit and posted a massive, detailed update about the rehearsal dinner on a popular relationship subreddit. In her post, she completely twisted the narrative. She claimed that she had uncovered evidence of my financial greed and emotional infidelity, and that when she confronted me gently at the dinner, I threw a violent tantrum and walked out on her. The post had gained over 30,000 upvotes in less than 12 hours. The comments were horrifying. Thousands of people were cheering her on, calling me a narcissist, a gold digger, and telling her she dodged a massive bullet. They were validating her insanity, fueling her delusion, and she was drinking it up. That was the moment I realized there was no going back. If I stayed with her, every argument we ever had, every financial decision we made, and every parenting choice we encountered would be uploaded online to be judged by a digital coliseum. I would be living my life under the constant surveillance of an invisible crowd. So, I didn't show up on Saturday. I turned off my phone, took a long drive across the state line, and checked into this motel. About 2 hours ago, I finally turned my phone back on to check my bank accounts and make sure our shared apartment lease could be canceled. I had a voicemail from Sarah's father. His tone had completely changed. He wasn't angry anymore. He sounded exhausted and embarrassed. He told me that after I left, Sarah spent the entire wedding day manic, refreshing her phone, reading the comments on her Reddit post out loud to her bridesmaids, completely obsessed with the validation she was receiving from strangers, while her actual wedding day collapsed around her. He told me he realized his daughter needed serious psychological help and apologized for his family's behavior. I haven't responded to him, and I haven't unblocked Sarah. I'm currently looking for a new apartment closer to my family. It hurts worse than anything I've ever experienced. 6 years of my life are gone. All because the person I loved preferred the counterfeit validation of online karma over the real, messy, trusting reality of a human relationship.